And normally I don't do my podcast on Tuesdays. I normally do it on Wednesday, so it just might be you and myself here, but that's okay.
With
That
me.
is okay. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a conversation with. I'm your humble host, Floyd Marshall Jr. And today I am joined by award-winning director Samantha Aldana. Now, this is my first time meeting her. I actually met her through a friend of mine, Stacy Pippi, who helps to run the Etheria Film Festival, one of the most preeminent horror film festivals in the world when it comes to dealing with women in horror, which is absolutely amazing. Um, this film festival is really phenomenal, and I was privileged to be a judge this year, which was really exciting. So when Stacy reached out and said, "Hey, Floyd, I have some phenomenal filmmakers that I want you to meet. You can watch their films. You can be a judge." I was like, "Well, let me check my calendar." Of course. So I had the privilege and the honor of watching this young lady's film. I actually watched a couple of her films, but just let me give you a little background on Samantha before we get into this. Samantha Aldana is an award winning, I hope I get this right, Belizean American director, writer based in Los Angeles. And she is most inspired by stories that use genre elements to explore the human condition and is heavily influenced by the storytelling traditions of her multicultural upbringing in South Mississippi and the Caribbean. Her debut film, Shapeless, was selected as a 2020 Fellow of the Gotham Narrative Lab and premiered at the 2021 Tribeca Film Festival. The film festival is distributed by XYZ Films, and most recently, Samantha directed a short film titled Angels, which I just watched again with 20th Digital, that is currently streaming on Hulu as part of Bite Size Halloween. The film made its festival premiere at the Overlook Film Festival and recently received the Audience Choice Award Bronze at the Dark Bridge Film Festival. And she is also the recipient of the Belize Film Commissioner's Emerging Storyteller Feature Film Award for her in development horror, Little Lying While. And this film was also selected to participate in the Tribeca Film Institute Breaking Through the Lens in the Emerging Voices program. Her past short film, The Melancholy Man, that I also watched, screened at Comic Con, phenomenal film. And it also premiered as a top pick on the film shortage and was awarded Best Narrative Film at the Audience Awards Women Film Challenge. She received the Best Director Award for her short film, These Wild Things, at the New York City Film Series and the Jury Award for Best LA Short Film at the New Orleans Film Festival. Her short C was featured on PBS and awarded Best Short Film and Best Cinematography at the International Kids First Film Festival. And her film Porcelain won the Jury Award at the Boston Independent Film Festival. And she also holds a BA in film directing from Columbia College Chicago and is a member of WIFT and NAILP, or I'll just spell it out, NAILP. Wow. When you know what's interesting, when you hear all of that read back to you, how does that sound?
It sounds like I've been busy. I've never had somebody read my bio. It's a really interesting experience.
Yeah, it really, you're sitting there, you're like, did I do that? I
Yes.
did that.
Yeah, that did happen.
Wow, really? I actually had someone read my bio on Clubhouse a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sitting there saying, did I do all of that? But this is an extensive bio. But we're going to go back to the very beginning. How did you get started in film?
So, I have been telling stories since I could speak, um, pretty much at the get-go. And then I started writing them down. And then I started like drawing them out. And I just loved movies. I love animated films. I loved books. I just loved playing make-believe.
Mhm.
And other kids grew out of that, and I never did. And I always felt like, okay, I guess I'll just do it by myself. I'll just like live in these like fantasy worlds. And when I was about 12, I was a huge fantasy nerd, and I was obsessed with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And so when those came out, I was there front row, like in line waiting, and then the DVDs came out and they had all of those extra features. extended versions. And so I was like, oh wow, is this like more of the movie? And I watched those behind the scenes, and that is when something just clicked in my head. I didn't know that like people made movies. I didn't know. I
Mm,
just I don't know what I thought before, that they just like appeared or something. But that it was hundreds of people making choices and living and living in these creative spaces and building, other worlds. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Uh, and this was coming out of South Mississippi, and nobody knew what I was talking about. Uh,
mm.
so it just continued to feel like a very lonely experience in my interests. But I got my hands on a little camera about this big, and I just started making movies. I taught myself how to edit, how to shoot, how to do all of that, and knew within the next few years that I wanted to go to film school and just commit my life to this. And thus, here we are.
Wow. 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 So, first of all, I knew there was a reason you were my first interview. You like the Lord, well, you love the Lord of the Rings. I am such a big J.R.R. Tolkien fan. He is, when it comes to fantasy, he is my number one guy. He
Same.
is he is my number one guy. No shade to anyone else, but he sits at the pinnacle for me.
Yeah.
And I've read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I don't know how many times. The Silmarillion. I don't know how many times. I've watched the movies countless times. My wife's like, "You're watching that again?" And I'm like, "Yes." I have all of the DVDs. I've watched um, the first animated Hobbit, so I've seen them all. So we are definitely kindred spirits
Yeah.
in that. So you go to film school. So what happens after you get out of film school?
So I focused in directing
Mhm,
during my time at Columbia, and a lot of my friends were starting to work in, in like crew positions
mhm,
to gain experience, like on-set experience. Many of them moved to LA, some of them moved to New York, and Chicago is a big city. It's, and as well as New York and LA, they're very expensive.
yes.
And I was like, well, I could go work, on these bigger crews and, gain experience in that way. But I just knew that I really wanted to practice my own work and build my portfolio. Um, and that I couldn't afford to do that in one of the three big cities. So I'm from the South. I grew up 45 minutes outside of New Orleans. And
Mm,
around this time, the film industry was just sort of beginning. Now it's one of the biggest industries in the country for film production. But
mm,
at the time it was just sort of beginning. And I was like, I think that there's enough there for it to like make sense. And then also I know it's just more affordable place. I also, I didn't like the cold. So I was like, it's got to either be LA or like New
okay.
Orleans. So I was like, let me just go back home, collect my bearings. I'll still be in a really creative community and be around film production, and then get to make my own work. And so that was my gamble, and it could have worked out better for me personally.
Mm,
New Orleans is, in my opinion, the best city in the country,
okay.
and it is full of really like just brilliant creatives, and it's just a very inspiring place to live. And
Mm,
I really felt welcomed to do exactly what I went there to do, which was to practice and make my own work. So see, Melancholy Man, even my first feature, all of those, pretty much everything, except Angels, was all shot in New Orleans. So it just really, and like through my community there, those things were possible.
mm.
Um, so that was sort of my trajectory. And then after I made my first feature, I thought maybe this is a good time to try to take that step and go to LA or New York. And so I moved to LA about a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay. Okay. So really quickly, why did you choose directing? Because I understand you also write.
Mhm.
So, what made you decide, you know what, I would rather direct than write? What was the decision behind that?
Yeah, I just always, it was always hand in hand.
Mm,
I had to direct because again, like especially as a kid, like there weren't any. I didn't have film classes or other kids who wanted to be filmmakers. It was just pretty much me making my friends do everything. And so I was just like inherently the director, the producer, the writer,
Okay.
the editor, the cinematographer, and out of all of the little jobs that I was like playing around doing, I realized like as the director, like you're like, this is my idea, this is my vision. And you sort of just orchestrate and inspire everyone else to bring their own thing to it and to help make it happen. And I just, I think I like, there was maybe a beat where I was like, oh, I like editing or I like cinematography. But by the time I was like 16 years old and I had
Mhm.
watched many more behind the scenes and got an understanding of what everyone does, I was like, it's got to be directing. I want to be the one that like builds it from the ground up as far as the like concepts.
Okay.
And I do write. I love working with writers as
Mhm.
well. Um, so yeah, it's
Oh,
my
okay. So you direct, and I must say you do a phenomenal job. Having watched some of your work, and I'm not just saying that because I'm interviewing you. This is what I do. So I've watched thousands of films, and y- the one thing that I've noticed with your films is that the color palette and just the shot selection. It's beautiful. The colors really stood out to me. So was that a conscious choice to have your films look that vibrant? Was that a conscious choice, especially C?
Mhm.
C was very interesting, and when she did the situation with the paintbrush, I'm saying, "Oh, see, now that's flashbacks to when my kids were small." But again, I noticed the vibrancy of your films and the shots, and especially when she got the idea to do the fish tank,
Mhm.
and she
Yes.
started putting everything. So the thing I kept thinking was no animals were harmed in the filming of this film. But can you talk about that? What is your approach when you're directing, and what is your relationship with your cinematographer? Because again, your shots were beautiful. So is there a conversation that you guys have before, during your shoots?
Yeah, of course. So color is really important to me. I'm a painter as well. So and I worked as a production designer for many years and various jobs in art departments. So the design of the world is one of my top priorities always. I can't fall into a story unless I'm infatuated with the style and the look. And so yeah, my projects tend to be very colorful or just very committed to whatever the tone and color palette is. And a huge part of that is working with the DP and finding ways to really make it consistent and make it just really like bold and unique and hopefully something you haven't seen before because that's something that's also really important to me in my work is to try to create unique experiences for audiences. And yeah, and for C, for instance, we wanted to just really have her dress pop, and for that, her and the fish and the home of the fish, so it's like the blue and orange color palette against this like stark white background, which to me was just like a visual metaphor for what how the girl feels.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's always really fun to like how do we articulate subtext and theme visually through the cinematography and the color palette. So that's like usually step one. We're getting into it. We dive deep right off the bat to get that stuff.
Okay, so were there any directors when you were coming up that inspired you to actually direct that way? Is that all you, or were there certain directors that really stood out for you? And you were like, you know what, that's someone that I can pattern myself after or
Yeah,
learn from.
yeah. So I do love like auteur, like stylized directors. I'm really
Mhm.
drawn to like Del Toro's work, who also really prioritizes production design. Um, I love Wes Anderson's work, who is just like the king of make like just really specific detail and palettes. Yeah, just really like all the auteurs have been and but not even just filmmakers, like painters too,
Mhm.
like surrealist painters like Frida Kahlo, like Dr. Seuss, like across the spectrum, like all of these artists just have such a clear vision, and they're able to like frame their whatever it is they're trying to say within that approach. And there's nothing more inspiring to me than that. And that's what I think I'm always like reaching for and exploring in my own work.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was listening to an interview that you had done a few years ago, and when you mentioned Dr. Seuss, I said, "Ah," but you know what's interesting? I don't think a lot of people really well, okay, this is just my opinion. I don't know if they really look at the artwork. They listen more to the words, but are you really looking at the artwork? Because again, it's very detailed.
Yeah.
It is it's very detailed. So that was interesting when I heard you say that Dr. Seuss was one of your inspirations. But let me ask you this: so female directors are making quite a bit of noise, and especially in Etheria. So when you decided that you were going to become a director and a director of color, did you get any pushback from that? Because again, um, female directors are on the rise, but for a very, very, very long time, that has been a white male dominated sport,
Yeah.
and especially in Hollywood. So did you, when you decided to do that, were there people saying, "Well, Samantha, do you really think you want to do that? You're gorgeous. Why don't you get in front of the camera and act?" Did you get a lot of pushback when you decided that directing was going to be the thing that I was going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. To be honest. Yes. Especially in the kind of filmmaking that I want to do, which
Mhm.
is really bold genre work. But you're right in that like it is changing, and there is like kind of this uproar of like really incredible like diverse filmmakers coming out to be like, no, we are here, and like we've been here the whole time, and
Mhm.
like trust us, support us, because I just think it's fascinating that like we both agree like Lord of the Rings is like one of the most incredible works of fantasy in history.
Mhm.
And what is the diverse representation in a story like that? And like, isn't that sad that there aren't more pieces like that? That's what I want to be a part of. It's like particularly my focus is genre with diverse perspective,
Mhm.
and I want to be a part of like that change that's already happening. And
Mhm.
that's what's so exciting about Etheria too. Like I can't wait to connect with all the other directors and see their work and just, be a part of it happening literally now, even though it's difficult and I get exhausted and frustrated a lot. I just have to remain on the side of like, all right, we're just moving along, and it is progress.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second. The frustration doing this, because this is not an easy business at all, and it's even more difficult for women, and again, women of color. So how do you get through that when you're hearing this is a business of no's,
Mhm.
but you're hearing no's, and you're looking at the person who heard the yes, and you're saying to yourself, and let's just be real, I am more talented than they are. So how do you get through that and keep going and saying, you know what, in spite of that, no, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, I think that I have to remind myself that I never needed permission. I just have always seized my own dreams and my own path. And like, I think too, thinking about where I come from and
Mhm.
like how hard it's been to get to where I'm at now based on lack of resource or understanding, even. Um, I, I feel like at a place where I can always look back and just be like, look what you've done. and it can be really scary when you go up for opportunities, and
Mhm.
then the no's are always really difficult. But I don't know, in a way, like, I don't have anything to lose, so that is a part of what encourages me to keep going and know that the rejection aspect is a part of it.
Mhm.
And whether or not somebody that has more experience gets it, or not, it's just like no's are going to be inevitable. And I've sort of over the last few years been practicing building that muscle to
Mhm.
better, like, kind of let it roll off and keep going. But yeah, just kind of focusing on, like, persevering, and like also having a community, because like, we've been saying, like, it is changing, and there are so many other, like like people of color and women of color, and just like diverse voices who are getting to take up the space, and we are at each other's sides, and we are here for each other, and that's been something too that's been really incredible. And many of the labs that I've gotten to be a part of, like, that has been one of the most positive takeaways. It's like, okay, like, at least I have somebody I can call when, like, something doesn't work out, and, like, they understand the frustration. um yeah, it's I don't know if I answered the question, but
No,
it's
you
amazing.
no, you did. And the thing that you said last is so very important, and something that I talk about quite often is community and relationship building, because oftentimes those are the people that you are going to actually, when you make it, those are going to be the people standing right there, because those are the people you're going to make it with,
Yes.
because they understand the grind, because you guys were actually grinding together, so yeah. But that's beautiful. But I wanted to ask you about shorts versus feature films, because again, listening to an interview that you did, you were talking about how you really like making short films, although people say, well, shorts aren't where it's at if you're trying to make money. But what you said was very on point, because for me, shorts is never about making money. For me, shorts is basically a business card. This is what I can do. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I love a short film, and you probably won't be making money off of it, but, like, is that the only reason to make something? I think it could, like you're saying, it could be a calling card or a business card. It could be a concept for a larger story that you want to use the short as a way to pitch the bigger feature. I love shorts just because I don't believe that every great idea doesn't need an hour and a half runtime. Some ideas can, like, C doesn't need to be an hour and a half. It's a 4-minute film that is, like, contained, and it says what it needs to say. And I love that. I love, it's like, I mentioned I'm a painter, like, I illustrate children's books. And so that's where my connection with Dr. Seuss comes from. And yes, I
Okay.
do look at the pictures, and I think that I love that medium, because even though I'm, an adult, I still love reading picture books, because they're just, 30 pages, and that's all that they need to be. And shorts remind me of that. And it's just a way to practice if you have a question that you want to ask, and explore. It's a smaller scale, lower stakes, opportunity to do that. So I imagine I'll be making shorts always. Angels was the last one that I did, and it was so fun to do it. And after having done a feature
Mhm.
as well, so it yeah, it's just a different medium, and you have to keep your expectations in check. Don't think you're going to get, like, you know a
Eh,
big paycheck from it, but
yeah.
you never know. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing, especially the length of your shorts. And I had two film festivals. I still have one, which is a virtual film festival. And what I would tell filmmakers is get to the point as soon as possible, because the sooner you get to the point, the better. And oftentimes, when festivals are programming, now we're talking about the business side,
Mm,
when festivals are programming, if they have the choice between a 20-minute short or three 5-minute shorts, they're picking three 5-minute shorts.
mhm.
That's what they're going to do, because now they're looking at it. Okay, I can sell more tickets. I can have a bigger and more diverse crowd as opposed to just selling tickets to this one 20-minute short. So you have to, it is what it is. You have to look at it from a business point. But
Yeah.
I want to talk about Melancholy Man really quickly
Mhm.
because that was such a phenomenal film and you got to the point in 5 minutes.
Mhm.
So how did you hone and I love the prose and I love the way that you did it. It was very different. So how did you hone your writing skills? But more importantly, you were working on Shapeless and it wasn't happening and you started doing this. So how did that come about? Because when you were talking about 26-minute shorts are too long, Michael. Someone on the audience asked a question, and if you have a question for Samantha, please put it in the chats, and I'll get to it. But can you talk about when you were uh, looking to write Shapeless, if I'm not mistaken, but you were hitting a wall,
Mm.
and you ended up writing Melancholy Man?
So, yes, I can talk all about that. Just a couple like twists though. The film that I was writing that I was frustrated at was Little Lying Wild,
Oh,
which is
sorry.
my feature. No, it's okay. It's my feature that is still in development, and I now have a writing partner on it,
Okay.
who's a brilliant screenwriter, uh, who I brought on to write Melancholy Man with me and help with all those beautiful prose that you're talking about. He studied poetry and he also came on to co-write Shapeless. His name's Bryce Parsons Tweston. So, and we still work together all the time. He's also co-writing Little Lying Wild with me. So, yes, but going back before I had a co-writer on Little Lying Wild, I went to Belize to stay with my family to write and I was like, my goal during this trip is to write the first draft of the script, and I just couldn't do it. I just had like severe writer's block, and I was just, I don't know, in just a terrible mood about it because I had all these like expectations for myself. And the only thing that I kept thinking about was just like how funny it is to like pout and be in a bad disposition and just to feel like negatively and not be able to, I don't know, get on with it, whatever you're like tripped up on. And I kept thinking about this grouchy old man because I felt like that was the energy that I was kind of conjuring.
Mhm.
And I drew him. I drew a little cartoon of him. And I was like, well, and the cartoon of him looks identical. Like we had an amazing costume designer who made his like little suit like based on the cartoon that I had drawn. And anyway, I drew this sketch, and I was like, maybe this is a character. Maybe
Mhm.
this is something that I should like think about. And yeah, I wrote the first draft of Melancholy Man during my failed writer's retreat for a little while.
Mm.
But I thought it had really good bones, and I thought it was really fun. And I shared it with Bryce, and I was like, let's make this better. And he came to the table with 100 good ideas, and so we shaped it. And then I reached out to my friend who has an incredible gallery space in New Orleans, and I was like, can we build the set in your warehouse? And he was like, sure. And I pitched it to a local film, um, like a nonprofit film education program called the Cool Cooperative. And I was like, would you guys want to like sponsor this film? And then the kids can come and shadow and be a part of the filmmaking process and ask whatever they want. And then I went and I taught workshops for the students as well. And that's how Melancholy Man came to exist. And I'm so
Mm.
happy it did. I'm so happy I couldn't write that first draft with A Little Lying Wild,
Wow.
because now
Wow.
this film exists.
It's a phenomenal film. And
Thank
where
you.
did you come up with the noses? Why the noses? What was that about?
Oh, that's how the cartoon came out. He just had
Oh, okay.
like a funny nose. And I was like, well, then, and she needs one too. And then we
Right.
had prosthetics on set and some visual effects touch ups to make it happen.
Wow. So it's interesting when I was listening to you talk about that. There's a gentleman that I listen to. His name is Ed Milet, and he says things don't happen to you; they happen for you.
Mm, I love
So
that.
the writer's block actually was not writer's block.
Mhm.
You were supposed to write Melancholy Man.
Yes.
And the other film was actually in the way of that.
Hmm.
So until you got Melancholy Man out, you weren't going to be able to write anything else because that was supposed to be birth.
Yeah.
That's how I see things. Because when you said that, I said, "Oh, she wasn't supposed to write that at that particular time,"
Hmm.
and you ended up making an absolutely amazing film, which showed people your range. It's a beautiful thing. But let's talk about Angels really quickly. That was an interesting film. Where did you guys come up with the concept for that? Because I understand you had a team on that.
Yeah, so Bryce, who I was mentioning, it was the
Mhm.
writer. He wrote the screenplay, and we pitched a handful of ideas as a team to 20th Digital, and they chose Angels. And so he wrote the script, and then we went and shot it in Mississippi, in the hometown that I grew up in,
Mm.
which is right outside of New Orleans. So we had our whole crew come in and cast from NOLA, and we made it there, and it was a challenge, but we shot it all in just 2 days, for small little budget, and it was just a marathon. But yeah, the idea, like, as far as the world building, to do sci-fi in addition to fantasy, and I in particularly want to see more like Latino women in science sci-fi, because there are just none,
Mhm.
except like Annihilation was like the only one I can think of that came out like in the last few years, um,
Mhm.
that had some like diverse characters in it. So I was like, let's have like these characters that have never been seen in this genre. Let's put them here in this situation. Um, just because it's never been done before. And it's like, again, like how I was saying earlier, a big part of what I want to do in my work. So it was really fun to get to build that world.
Yeah, it was an interesting film. Uh, do you plan on possibly turning it into a feature? Because I don't want to give it away because I want people to see it. But after the young lady did what she did with the angel and mom, and then she hears a sound and she looks out the window and there are other people coming to visit.
Yeah.
I was saying, okay, so you thought that this was a one-off and you were going to get away whatever it was you were doing. But I now question, when the angel screamed, did the other entities actually hear that, and is that why they were coming? Or
Yeah, I think that the way that we were imagining it was that there was this like connectiveness between this species, or this, these beings.
Mhm.
And when the one was, in trouble, it sort of sent this signal of sorts, like a call for help.
Okay, okay, so any plans on possibly turning that into a feature? Because when I saw that, I said, okay, see, I need to know what happens next.
Yeah, that was the goal, to make people want more. So I do hope that we can expand it into a feature. That's the
Okay.
that's the dream.
So now you said you're in LA now, correct?
Yeah. Mhm.
Do you know a gentleman by the name of Nelson Grande?
No.
See, I'm going to have to put you two in touch
Yeah.
because he has his own studio, and if I'm not mistaken, they're about to launch. If they have not already,
Mhm.
they've launched their own television station, Avenida Productions,
Very
um, and he is really looking to build up the Latin film community, and he just so happens to be in Los Angeles.
I would love to meet him.
So I would definitely make that introduction because him and his wife are Fanny Grande. They are absolutely phenomenal people.
Great.
So
Yeah.
so yeah. So what's next?
Hopefully my feature Little Lying Wild, or Angels the Future.
Okay.
But they're both, with the strike happening right now, everything's just on hold. So not much writing happening, but hanging in there
Okay.
for it to
Okay.
all be lifted. And yeah, those are two projects that I'm eager to get off the ground. Little Lang Wild is written. We're just pitching for financing right now, which we can't do during the strike. So
Okay.
that that's happening. And then I'm always just thinking about things I want to do. There are a couple of short ideas that I think would be fun to explore. But yeah, it's been a strange time right now. I think that the festival circuit for angels has been I've been really grateful for it because
Mhm.
it's been kind of some noise happening in this like really still summer.
Wow. So do you know about the Meet Show Film Festival that's actually happening in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, so Angels is gonna screen there
What day?
Thursday at 5 p.m. 13th, I think.
Oh, wow. See, I'm coming,
Oh,
but I won't be there till Friday because I have an event in Philadelphia. But I hope you're going to be there all week because I would love to actually meet you in person. So I'll be there Friday through Sunday when it usually I stay for the entire 5 days. But again, I have a prior commitment that I could not break.
no, let's link up. That would be great.
Definitely, definitely. So where can people find you?
You can find me on, well, my website has everything I've ever done, and that's at SamanthaAldana.com. And then I'm on Instagram, which my handle is, I think, one, and
Yes.
my name, Samantha Aldana. Um, yeah, I mean, those are the two best bets.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard it here first. One, Samantha Aldana on Instagram, and then SamanthaAldana.com. Please go and follow this phenomenal young filmmaker on Instagram. You guys know that I don't, normally recommend people follow people, but she is such a phenomenal filmmaker. I really enjoyed your work, and I look forward to seeing more of it. I'm just bummed that I can't be there to see the screening that Thursday, but there'll be other screenings.
There will be. Thank you so much. Those kind and supportive words. It really means a lot.
Yeah, but thank you for agreeing to sit down with me for a little bit so we could chop it up about film and your stellar work. Because again, look, Tribeca and so many other awards, ladies and gentlemen, this is the real deal. And if now, before we go, if anyone has a question, now is the time to ask it because you can get some phenomenal advice for a low, low price of free. This does not happen that often, ladies and gentlemen. So, but if not, Samantha, again, thank you so much for joining me on a conversation with. This has been absolutely amazing. You definitely have to come back after your film screens because we have to talk about, how, you like that in-person energy because there's nothing like watching your film in front of a live audience. So I'm definitely looking forward to hearing you talk about that. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you follow Samantha again on Instagram. That's one Samantha Aldana on Instagram and Samantha Aldana on SamanthaAldana.com.
Mhm.
Any parting words?
Just thank you so much for this space, and I'm so excited to connect with you. Let's meet up when you're in LA at the show, and yeah, thanks. Anybody who had questions or has questions later, please reach out to me. I'm happy to share anything that would be helpful to y'all.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for joining myself and the amazing Samantha on a conversation with, and I will end it as I always end it. Love this like a hobby, but above all else, treat this like a business. And on that note, have a phenomenal night. Peace, everyone.
You, thank you.